I've updated Unity to 2022.3, and this is the LTS release, which is the long-term stable release. This is the first official release of Unity ECS, which means that the core library should remain reasonably stable from now on. One of my main reasons for prototyping in Unity at the moment is that I want to experiment with the dot system. So we'll now need to install it. I'll need to open the package manager, and we can now install the package. The package that I'm going to install is Entities Graphics. The Entities Graphics package relies on most of the other Entities packages, so the majority of what we need for Entities will be added when we install this package. This package allows the ECS system to communicate with the Unity renderer. We should now have our entities and the Entities Graphics installed. We should also have the newest version of the Burst compiler installed. If I select Entities, we should see that there are a number of dependencies here. A lot of these are reasonably straightforward and understandable, the main exception being monocecil, which is actually used in the development of entities, and we'll generally not be using this directly. A package which we do not actually need to install yet, but I am going to install, is Unity Physics. This is one of two physics packages which is compatible with entities. The other is Havoc Physics. So that will install the majority of what I need for entities. We do not need to install a huge amount of packages in order to get entities working, and this should be sufficient for what we need at the moment. I can now start working on a basic structure for organizing the game. I'll begin by adding some folders. This is very rough organization, and I'll probably update this later. The first folder will be called Scripts. I'll be adding some folders to our Scripts folder. The first of these will be called Player. So we're not going to do anything with the scripts quite yet. Next, I'm going to do some organization for my scenes. I'll place these within a folder which I'll call Game for the moment. I will name this folder with an underscore. If I name all the main folders which I'm going to be working with an underscore, they'll be first in the hierarchy. It will also make it easier to avoid confusion with folders which have not been created by me. I'll add an initial folder here called Scenes. I'll then create a second folder for my test scenes. I'll create an additional folder here, and this folder is going to be called Subscenes. In the test scenes, I can create a new scene. I will open the scene. I'll make this scene feel a bit better by adding a sky and fog volume. I'll call this scene Test Character. I'll be using this to test my initial player controller. If necessary, I can rename this later. Now I want to add an entity for my character to the scene, and to do this I'm going to create a subscene for the character. A subscene is actually not a specific item, it's essentially just a scene. So under my subscene folders I'll create a new scene. The scene will be named Sub Player. I can enter this scene. This scene contains a camera and a directional light. I do not want to keep either of these, so I'll delete them. And for the moment, I'm just going to add a capsule to the scene. I'll make sure that all the transforms are zeroed out. I'll then raise the capsule in the y-axis, and this will be raised by 1. This will place the bottom of the capsule at the origin of the scene. This will be our initial character setup. I will add the character rig soon, but initially I'll start with a capsule. We may also want to keep a capsule version of this character for testing purposes, although that probably will not happen. One thing that I do want with this capsule is a sense of direction, so I'm going to add some geometry to indicate which way this capsule is facing. In this case, I'll use a cube. I will move this to the top of the capsule, and then I'll shift it down the z-axis. I'll then scale this down, and I'll update its position in relation to the cylinder. So that will give me my basic character. I'll then add a materials folder. In this folder I'll create a material, and this material will be called Default. I'll then duplicate this material, and the duplicate will be called Light Blue. I'll make sure that both of these materials are HDRP lit. For the light blue material, I'll change the color to be a light blue color. I'll add these to my character. The capsule will be the default, and the cube will have the light blue material. This will give me my subscene. I can save this, and then I'll return to the test character scene. I'm going to add an empty game object to the scene, and I'm going to use this game object to refer to my subscene. Anything that is within a subscene will be converted to an entity automatically, and we will generally create entities using subscenes. We're going to add a component to this game object, and to get this component, I'll search for subscene. There's a Unity scene component called subscenes, and we'll add this to our game object. Here I'll look for the scene asset, and this will be set with our sub player asset. We should now have our subscene loaded into the scene, and there is a checkbox next to the subscene which will allow us to edit it. This allows us to bring our player into the scene. If I press play, we should now have our player showing up as an entity. I can change the authoring environment to runtime, and I should be able to examine my entities. I do have a small mistake here. The cube should be a child of the capsule. We should now be able to see all of the default components which are part of our character entities. In this case, both the box and the capsule are being converted to entities correctly. There is one thing here that I want to correct, and that's the placement of the subscene. I want this to be at the origin, so I'll reset the transforms. This gives me my first entity. Next, I'll start working on input, so we can actually move items within the scene.